Hello, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for this opportunity. My name is Yu Yang from the University of Lisbon Center for English Studies. Today, I'm presenting Silence and Stillness in Slow Cinema, Emersonian and Taoist readings of American and Chinese contemplative film. In an era of endless scrolling and hyperfast media, why do some films deliberately slow down? Why do directors choose long takes, minimal dialogue, and vast silences? These choices are not just stylistic, they resist acceleration and invite contemplation. My paper argues that silence and stillness function as transcultural aesthetic strategies in contemporary slow cinema. They converge in challenging media saturation, yet diverge in philosophical roots. Emersonian self-reliance in American films versus Taoist interdependence in Chinese ones. I draw on three key texts: Paul Schrader's transcendental style, Ira Jaffe's slow movies as counter to action cinema, and De Luca and Jorge's global pluralization of slow cinema. Let us begin with the theoretical pillars that underpin this inquiry. These three texts do not merely describe slow cinema, they collectively articulate its profound capacity to counter the relentless tempo of modern visual culture, offering instead a space for sustained reflection, spiritual inquiry, and existential reckoning. First, Paul Schrader's transcendental style in film, Ozu, Bresson, Dreyer, originally published in 1972 and reissued in 2018 with the pivotal new introduction, Rethinking Transcendental Style. This work stands as one of the most enduring theoretical contributions to contemplative cinema. Schrader originally identified a stylistic triad: everyday realism giving way to disparity and culminating in decisive stasis that enables the expression of the transcendent, the wholly other, in the austere films of Ozu, Bresson, and Dreyer. In 2018, Schrader revisits this framework with remarkable prescience, explicitly linking it to contemporary slow cinema. He traces a lineage through Tarkovsky's "Dead Time", Deleuze's time image, and filmmakers like Kiarostami and Tar, arguing that transcendental style has evolved into a broader aesthetic of duration and restraint. This evolution, he suggests, allows cinema to lean into the image, fostering a contemplative distance that resists narrative consumption and opens possibilities for spiritual encounter. Schrader's insight remains foundational: silence and stasis are not absences, but active thresholds to transcendence. Next, Ira Jaffe's slow movies, countering the cinema of action, shift the emphasis from spiritual release to existential and sociocultural critique. Jaffe defines slow movies as a deliberate aesthetic rebellion against the spectacle-driven cinema of action that dominates mainstream filmmaking. He identifies core formal traits: curtailed physical motion, infrequent cutting, austere mise-en-scène, and foregrounded spatio-temporal vacancy that together create a cinema of contemplation. These films mirror the quiet, often overlooked realities of contemporary life: isolation, prolonged waiting, diminished agency, and the weight of inaction. Jaffe's argument is deeply resonant. In an age of distraction and relentless forward momentum, slow movies restore the dignity of stillness, allowing viewers to confront the emptiness and boredom that mainstream cinema typically suppresses. His work thus reframes slowness not as deficiency, but as a profound ethical and existential stance. Finally, Tiago De Luca and Nuno Barata's Jorge's edited volume Slow Cinema pluralizes and globalizes the phenomenon. Rather than positing a unified movement, they present slow cinema as a heterogeneous constellation of practices across diverse geopolitical contexts. They emphasize duration as a felt, resistant experience, one that challenges the instrumentalized temporality of late capitalism and invites political and cultural reflection. By historicizing the term and mapping its manifestations beyond Europe and North America, the volume illuminates how slowness operates as a form of cultural resistance and aesthetic renewal worldwide. Their plural approach is crucial. It reminds us that slow cinema is not a Western invention, but a global response to shared conditions of acceleration. Together, these texts converge on silence and stillness as resistance strategies, spiritual, existential, and plural, global, while offering complementary lenses for my transcultural analysis. To fully appreciate the significance of silence and stillness in contemporary contemplative cinema, we must first situate them within the historical trajectory of slow cinema itself, a mode that has evolved as a sustained act of aesthetic and ethical resistance. Slow cinema did not emerge in isolation; its roots lie in the immediate post-war period, most notably in Italian neorealism of the 1940s and 1950s. Emerging from the ruins of World War II, directors like Roberto Rossellini, Vittorio De Sica, and Luciano Visconti turned the camera toward the streets, using non-professional actors, location shooting, and long, unadorned takes to capture the moral and material devastation of everyday life. Films such as Rome, Open City, and Bicycle Thieves rejected Hollywood gloss in favor of raw realism, laying the groundwork for slowness as a tool of social witness and contemplative observation. This impulse deepened in the 1950s to 1970s with European modernist cinema, where slowness became a deliberate stylistic and philosophical stance. Directors such as Yasujiro Ozu, Robert Bresson, Michelangelo Antonioni, and Andrei Tarkovsky extended the neorealist legacy into more introspective territory. Ozu's static compositions and pillow shots, Bresson's ascetic minimalism, Antonioni's alienated urban landscapes, and Tarkovsky's meditative long takes and sculpting in time, transformed duration from mere technique into a medium for existential inquiry and spiritual depth. As Paul Schrader notes in his 2018 rethinking, these filmmakers legitimized dead time, moments emptied of narrative urgency, as a pathway to transcendence. Fast forward to the contemporary era, late 20th century onward, and slow cinema has undergone a global revival, no longer confined to Europe but manifesting as a worldwide response to the dominance of fast-paced, action-oriented, spectacle-driven cinema, what Ira Jaff calls the cinema of action. In this context, slow cinema, exemplified by directors like Tsai Ming-liang, Lav Diaz, Abhijit Veerasesakul, and the filmmakers we will discuss today, employs long takes, minimalism, austere mise-en-scène, and foregrounded spatio-temporal vacancy to resist instrumentalized time and invite viewers to inhabit duration as a felt, reflective experience. As this timeline illustrates, slow cinema has always functioned as a countercurrent, from post-war realism's moral urgency, through modernist introspection, to today's global pluralism. At its core, it privileges contemplation of underrepresented realities, waiting, stillness, emptiness, over distraction and acceleration. This historical arc sets the stage for our transcultural reading of how silence and stillness manifest in American and Chinese contemplative traditions. Having established the historical and theoretical foundations of slow cinema, let us now turn to its specific manifestations in American contemplative filmmaking. Here, directors such as Terrence Malick, Paul Schrader, and Kelly Reichardt deploy silence and stillness not merely as formal devices but as profound arenas of Emersonian trial, spaces where the individual soul confronts spiritual doubt, ethical responsibility, and the possibility of quotidian transcendence amid the disorienting conditions of modern alienation. This approach resonates deeply with Ralph Waldo Emerson's transcendentalist vision, articulated most vividly in his 1836 essay Nature. Emerson describes the experience of standing in the woods as becoming a transparent eyeball, absorbing the currents of the universe of being, where nature reveals divine unity beneath apparent fragmentation. In the American slow cinema tradition, silence performs a similar function. It strips away social noise and narrative propulsion, forcing the solitary individual into direct, unmediated encounter with the self, nature, and the oversoul. Consider Terence Malick's The Tree of Life. The film alternates vast, wordless cosmic sequences, nebulae forming, primordial oceans surging, dinosaurs moving with slow, almost reverent grace, with intimate memories of 1950s Texas family life. These prolonged silences, accompanied only by ambient natural sounds or sparse choral motifs, establish what Schroeder calls "dead time", creating a palpable disparity between cosmic indifference and personal grief. Young Jack's mute wanderings through twilight suburbs and woodlands curtail physical motion, compelling an internal reckoning with paternal authority and existential loss. Malick's refusal of explanatory dialogue mirrors Emerson's call for solitary immersion in nature to restore reason and faith. Silence here becomes a trial. It tests the soul's capacity to perceive unity amid fragmentation, offering fleeting glimpses of transcendence in quiet observation of natural cycles. This theme intensifies in Malick's To the Wonder, where dialogue fragments into whispers and voiceovers, giving way to extended silent tableau. Marina's slow, almost ritualistic movements through golden wheat fields or tidal landscapes evoke Emersonian joy in nature's immediacy, her body absorbing universal currents like the transparent eyeball. Neil's isolated highway drives and motionless stares enact ethical paralysis, with silence amplifying doubt and longing. Malick's long takes and offset editing maintain contemplative distance, preventing easy emotional consumption and challenging the hyper-accelerated rhythms of contemporary media. Transcendence emerges not as doctrine but as intuitive insight, born of quiet endurance. Paul Schrader, uniquely positioned as both theorist and practitioner, brings austere precision to this tradition in First Reformed. Reverend Ernst Toller's ecological despair and personal grief unfold through rigorously composed long takes that severely limit motion, extended silent vigil at a sparse desk, journaling amid the diegetic creaks of wood and distant wind. These sequences foreground what Jaffe terms spatio-temporal vacancy, mirroring the slow movie's curtailment of action and its reflection of existential isolation. Toller's solitary walks through polluted industrial landscapes force confrontation with a degraded natural world, echoing Emerson's warning that modern materialism obscures divine currents. A pivotal, prolonged overhead shot of Toller, lying motionless in agony after self-harm, approaches Schrader's decisive stasis. Human expression freezes, opening the potential for transcendent break through amid despair. Wide angles and sparse sound compel ethical reflection on individual complicity, transforming silence into a testing ground for self-reliant faith. Kelly Reichardt offers the most grounded, minimalist inflection of this mode, rooting it in quotidian precarity. In Wendy and Lucy, Wendy's stranded journey is rendered through static shots of empty streets, curbside waiting, and forest clearings. Extended sequences with only ambient woodland sounds underscore vulnerability while suggesting momentary Emersonian restoration in unmediated nature. Dialogue sparsity privileges the quiet realities of economic marginality often elided in mainstream cinema. In Certain Women, the final segment of The Rancher, Lily Gladstone, conveys unrequited longing almost entirely through mute routines, dawn horse tending, solitary drives, turning waiting into intuitive insight amid social disconnection. Reichardt's environmental sound design and minimal cutting align silence with Emersonian self-reliance in ordinary experience, testing resilience against isolation. In striking contrast, Chinese contemplative cinema deploys similar formal restraint, long takes, minimal dialogue, spatio-temporal emptiness to evoke Taoist principles drawn from the Tao Te Ching, emptiness, too, as generative void, non-action, wu wei, as effortless alignment with natural processes, and relational flux as the harmonious interdependence of presence and absence. Without claiming a direct philosophical influence, these films resonate profoundly with Taoist thought, where stillness dissolves individual striving into broader environmental and temporal flows, rather than isolating the self for trial. Jiazhangke's still life situates quietude amid the monumental displacement caused by the Three Gorges Dam. Wide static long takes of half-submerged towns and motionless figures embody Shu not as mere lack, but as generative space within transformation. Characters surge silently across vast ruins, their minimal motion aligning with Wu Wei. They do not force action, but allow natural and historical processes, demolition, flooding, to unfold in real time. Silence here dissolves individual quests into collective experience, foregrounding relational interdependence with the environment and history. Gia's resistance to narrative urgency invites viewers to inhabit duration as a felt encounter with change. Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love refines unconsummated longing into exquisite restraint. Repetitive slow-motion passages in narrow corridors, sparse dialogue, and lingering shots of empty spaces after characters depart create a non-linear temporality. Frozen gestures, smoking alone, eating in silence, amplify emotional depths through non-action. Wong's offset editing and lingering vacancy evoke the yin-yang interplay of presence and absence. Desire manifests not through declaration but through what is withheld. Silence heightens relational tension without resolution, turning restraint into profound resonance. Begun pushes temporal suspension furthest in Kylie Blues, most famously through its celebrated 41-minute continuous take gliding through rural Kylie. The camera moves fluidly past stationary figures and misty landscapes as past, present, and future coexist in single, dreamlike continuity. Minimal dialogue and ambient sound prioritize felt duration over plot, challenging instrumentalized time while embodying Taoist spontaneity. Ziran. Emptiness here enables generational interconnectedness. Individual stories dissolve into broader flux. In these Chinese works, silence and stillness foreground relational harmony and process-oriented emptiness. Rather than testing the isolated soul, they integrate human experience into environmental and temporal interdependence, offering a counterpoint to the American emphasis on individual trial. These practices converge in refusing hyperacceleration, restoring contemplative duration against saturation, yet they diverge philosophically. Emersonian isolation for personal renewal versus Taoist integration into broader processes. By dialoguing them through interpretive lenses, not direct influence, we extend slow/transcendental scholarship beyond Eurocentric frames toward a more inclusive global perspective. In sum, silence and stillness are transcultural tools for resistance, contemplation, and ethical negotiation in an overloaded media age. They remind us that cinema can slow us down, not to bore, but to see, feel, and reflect differently. Thank you. I welcome your questions.